Development hell is one of the enduring nightmares of really every filmmaker, be it director, writer, or producer at any level of the industry. A project you care so deeply about and want to share with the world gets stuck in a limbo of frivolous rewrites and battles for funding. It happened with Jodorowsky's version of Dune, it happened with Lynn Ramsey's version of The Lovely Bones, and, well, it even happened to Tim Burton in 1997 with his attempted Superman revival based on the Death of Superman arc from the comic books. 17 years later, a documentary by animator and director Jon Schnepp goes behind the scenes to unravel how Burton's Superman film, at one point penned by none other than Kevin Smith, became the victim of indecision, conflicting visions, and just plain old bad timing at late 90s Warner Brothers. Death of Superman Lives mixes all new interviews, the big draw being both the reclusive Burton as well as the notoriously oddball producer and former hairdresser John Peters, the same behind Burton's 1989 version of Batman, with archive footage and photos and concept art to tell of how this strange film never really saw the light of day. There are no holds barred as the crew, from mere ADs to managers to mainly the different concept artists and designers, recall just how unwieldy things were, even in pre-production, as well as the contradictory and unusual Peters himself. Indeed, Peters, with his hybrid of hairdresser and street fighter, is just fascinating to watch in the interviews as he tells his side of the story and loudly defends himself against the various accusations of mismanagement and just ideas he offered, the most infamous being, of course, things like giant spiders, polar bear guards, skull ships, and, well, no flying for Superman. While Burton, on the other hand, speaks with an edge of sadness about the whole thing, and just how trying and often infuriating he found the whole experience. Whereas Peter's dissatisfaction seems to come from more a place of ego, Burton's feels more genuine. Sadly, there is no Nick Cage here, but the snippets of archive footage from various interviews he did over the years featuring him don't do a bad job necessarily of filling us in on his perspective. Now, thankfully, Schnepp does not let this whole thing devolve into a slog of just talking heads. He regularly breaks it up with an array of visual delights, including the incredibly surreal and vibrant concept art and storyboards for Burton's vision, as well as footage of the costume tests and the visual effects for the different suits, including the much-decried Rainbow Regeneration suit, which is, for me at least, the highlight as we see Cage's thought process on the character of Superman and Clark during these tests. He's absolutely dedicated and seems to just be relishing the opportunity to play such an icon, and you almost end up feeling sorry for him by the end, since you, well, didn't get to see him do it, and he seemed really serious and committed to it. Even his rationale behind how Clark Kent wouldn't be thought of as Superman actually does make kind of sense, and I won't spoil it here, but props to Cage. That's a good deal of thought more than we see typically with most actors who just take on the Clark mantle. We even get some new material recorded in the form of some rather well done, albeit low budget reconstructions of scenes from the 3 different screenplays. Some live action, like a bit of the Doomsday fight featuring a stop motion version of the famous monster, and others animated just as you'd expect from a project with Schnepp's involvement, such as seeing the Nicolas Cage Superman in flight. Despite the obvious limitations in terms of finances, they actually do look really good, and it's just nice to see these scenes finally come alive in some shape or form. The soundtrack by Frederick William Scott, while not quite a recreation of what a Danny Elfman Superman would have been like, which is a bit of a shame, is sufficiently both edgy and ambient to work as underscore across both the interviews as well as the reconstructions, even if the main theme of the documentary is in and of itself a little repetitive and generic. However, where the film does undeniably succeed with flying colours is the level of insight. Hearing the variety of perspectives and viewpoints on such a strange film, straddling the lines between big mainstream action blockbuster and more surreal introspective drama that wanted to really re-examine the character that, when you think about it, has come to define superhero more than just about any other character, is just really gripping. Through this, the film is able to debunk and dispel a number of rumors and memes that had surrounded the film for many years, including the aforementioned rainbow suit, which was only for one scene, as well as other things like Cage's main suit not being that ugly purple thing from a botched costume test photo where it looked like Cage was stoned off his mind. The film really does serve as an effective lens into the often overlooked importance as well as headache of pre-production and development, something many audiences don't consider at all when it comes to the rougher side of filmmaking, regardless of your budget. And being a filmmaker myself, it really hit home with me, and I found myself really identifying with a lot of the struggles. Because, on some level, I had been there myself. Where Schnepp's documentary does come up a little short is more in the technical field. The lack of remastering of some archive footage as well as an inconsistent sound mix, especially in Burton's cavernous house, do bring down some of the professionalism of the film. Plus, the documentary doesn't dwell on Superman Lives' infamous actual narrative and how it would have played out as much as I would have liked it to. Really, you would need some knowledge of any of the three main scripts by Kevin Smith, Wesley Strict, or Dan Gilroy, or even the Death of Superman comics going in to really get the most out of the film. And while it does definitely have a very specific audience, it still wouldn't have hurt to dwell on what was actually written a little more to add context for the film's fondness of dwelling on what feels like pages and pages of admittedly nice looking concept art, but stuff that just feels less justified by a narrative than just an excuse to show off. However, the passion evident in the documentary just about overcomes those pitfalls and delivers a great watch for film lovers and filmmakers alike. And just seeing all this previously unseen material, especially with regards to Cage's Superman, is highly fascinating. It helps put a lot of things into perspective, and consequently has you doing something you never thought you'd want to say. You actually kind of want to watch the Burton Superman film.